Well, hello, everybody out there in Jammin' Java land, and welcome. As the immortal Vince Scully might say, hello, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to each one of you wherever you may be. Tonight is going to be a very special show. It's going to be a labor of love for me because Mickey Jones, who we're going to pay tribute, we're going to honor, we're going to celebrate him, and we're going to be entertained by him. I'll tell you what, this guy was a special guy on this planet. And he passed away in 2018, and he would be 80 years old on June the 10th. And so today, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I guess that would be Thursday, June the 10th. And anybody who knows him misses him dearly, because he was just a beloved guy who was bigger than life. And what a career, what a legacy, acting, music, 17 gold records. He's part of the rock and roll history too, and it's just an amazing story. And so we're going to tell his story. We're going to pay tribute to him, and we're going to honor his legacy. I look forward to doing this tonight. And so we always start with a word of prayer, and I know that Mickey would want us to do that, because Mickey loved Jesus Christ big time. And so we're going to bring on our illustrious Pastor Chuck Pearson to lead us in prayer.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you had a really blessed day from our Lord. June 6th. Mentioning that date probably brings one specific event to mind for most of us, and that would be the Normandy beach landing during World War II, June 6, 1944. It's a day in which the Allies began their fight to end Nazi domination in Europe and their influence in the world. It was a day in which thousands of Allied soldiers sacrificed their lives in order to maintain our freedom. Of much less importance on that day to most of you, but of supreme importance to me, June 6th, 1970, was the day in which Marcina and I were married. And before you say it, yes, I know it's a miracle that woman could stay with me for 51 years. But what can I say? God is good all the time. One thing I discovered in the years of marriage, in which I used to share with young couples as they came for premarital counseling, was the fact that nobody knows what they're getting into when they decide that they're going to get married. I've discovered that over and over, and things change, but things still stay the same in a lot of ways. In Luke 14, Jesus tells us to count the cost of being his disciple. There were a lot of people at the time that were following him simply for what they could get out of it. He fed them, he entertained them, they heard all these nice stories, and they saw the miracles and all of that stuff. So I wonder if maybe things haven't changed all that much, that there are still people who follow Jesus only for what they could get out of it. Pollster George Gallup concluded from his polls that fewer than 10% of evangelical Christians could be considered deeply committed. And he went on to say that most of those who profess Christianity don't know the basic teachings and don't act differently because of their Christian experience. George Barna, who is a Christian pollster, found that almost half, 46% of the people that he interviewed, the evangelicals, read their Bible only once a week or not at all. And I read things like that, and that makes me wonder, aren't we in an age where maybe people are only Christian for what they can get out of it? Forgiveness, after all, seems like a really good thing. I think the more important question is, am I one of those Christians? It is only in it for what he can get out of it. Have I really counted the cost of what it means to be the disciple of Jesus? And I look at my life and I can see evidence on one hand that says, no, I haven't counted the cost. I'm simply there simply because it's a really good thing. You can get a lot of good stuff out of it. And on the other hand, I look at it and I look at some of the things in my life, and he says, yes, I have counted the cost, and I know the cost of being his disciple. So when I look at that and I see the evidence on both sides, some of it negative, is the result of my own human frailties and sin. On the positive side, it's simply a result of God's grace, mercy, and forgiveness. So I think the question I have to ask myself, and the question each of us has to ask ourselves, is this: who do I belong to? Is it Jesus, or is it the world? Pray with me. Heavenly Father, we just ask you at this time to help us look into our own hearts and see our commitment and see the things, Heavenly Father, that where we fall short, and help us to see also where you work in our lives. Help us to have a greater commitment to you and to follow you better more perfectly each day, Father. We ask it all in Jesus' name. We ask a blessing on Robbie's program this evening too, that he might touch hearts and lives for the Jesus that is the Son of God, who guides us and directs us all our lives. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. One other note, it's the birthday of one of the most talented people that I have ever met. She blows me away every time I hear her or see her. She is such a talented person. So happy birthday, Sarah Ann Nemitz. God bless you, dear. Keep on doing what God leads you to do. Okay, Robbie, back to you.
Jesus is the light shines in the darkness, all around the world, for everyone to see. Jesus is the Word, come to live among us, truth and faith, the Father's glory, sent for you and me. He's the light, He's the Lamb, the joy of our salvation. He's the way, He's the truth, He's the light. Son of God, Son of Man, the Lord of all creation. Jesus is the light of the world. A man was sent from God. He came to be a witness to the light, that people would believe. Tell the world the news. God so loves us so, sent His Son to Calvary. Love set us free. He's the light, He's the Lamb, the joy of our salvation. He's the way, He's the truth, He's the light. Son of God, Son of Man, the Lord of all creation. Jesus is the light. Jesus is the light. Jesus is the light of the world. Come on. The light of Christ has come into the world. Behold the Lamb of God. Yes. The light of Christ has come into the world. Give Him praise now. Behold the Lamb of God. Say, the light of Christ has come into the world. Behold the Lamb of God. Oh, behold the Lamb. Behold the Lamb of God.
Amen. Sing it, Sister Sarah. And you know what? I did not know that Pastor Chuck was going to bring up the birthday girl. So what an appropriate transition. An appropriate segue. So yes, today is Sarah Nimitz' birthday. Somebody asked here. Thomas Steves asked, "Who is the female singer?" Burt Lanson answered her, "Sarah Nimitz," and then he commented, "I totally thought so. Love her. Saw her at the Canyon Club a few years back. Such a great voice." She's more than a great voice. This young lady is a super talent. I mean, super talent with a TTT. And she is, I call her the genius because I really do think she is a genius. She's got so many skills. And today is her birthday. And how cool. And I'm blessed to get a chance to collaborate with her on a lot of things. By the way, Larry, I will correct you. It's Sarah without an H. That's right. Deborah's got it right. Sarah without an H. S-A-R-A. And I think she's 19. I'm not sure. She's about the same age as me, and I'm 19, so she's got to be somewhere in there. So there you have it. Happy birthday, Sarah Nimitz, you genius girl, you. Tonight, Mickey Jones. Oh, man, this has been, ever since he passed away, he only lived just literally a few blocks from me, and we would hang out all the time. And I miss him so much, and what a talent. You're going to get to know, if you don't know much about Mickey Jones, you're going to learn a lot more about him than you knew, because this guy, you've seen him because he's been in so many movies and on commercials and TV shows. You've heard him. Of course, you don't see him when you hear him. He's played with some of the most historic rock bands ever. And he's got a fascinating story. There's a gentleman, Jerry McWhorter. How do you like that for a start? Jerry McWhorter. And Jerry did a one-man show with Mickey a few years ago, and it's now a full-length movie, and it's really amazing. And I have a bunch of different clips from that show, and so we're going to play some of the clips, and you'll get a chance to know Mickey Jones a little bit more. And by the way, before I hope that Mrs. Jones, Phyllis is watching. I hope you were able to log on. I know that she said she may have some trouble logging on. She hopefully is watching, and I know we have a lot of Mickey's friends who loved Mickey so much as we all did. If you ever met Mickey once, you were his friend for life. That's one of the things, and that was one of Kenny Rogers' sayings: is if you become a friend of Mickey, you're a friend for life. But let's get to know Mickey a little bit, and we're going to start at the beginning. He's from Texas. Interestingly enough, Mickey Jones and Kenny Rogers were born in the same hospital in Houston, Texas. But then Mickey was raised in Dallas. And, here we go. This is Jerry McWhorter's one-man show with Mickey Jones.
What does Elvis, Bob Dylan, the Beatles, Frank Sinatra, and Anne Margaret all have in common? Well, of course, Mickey Jones.
I was fortunate that when I was 16 years old, I was playing drums for an old blues player named Jimmy Reed. And I remember going and playing these SMU fraternity parties, and I'd get $10 for playing all night long and feel guilty about taking the money because I loved it so much.
Well, that could be the end of most people's story, to just be able to say they played with Jimmy Reed.
That's a good lick, though.
But
and the thing about playing
feel.
with Jimmy Reed, it's funny you bring that up again. Jimmy Reed wanted you to play dead straight ahead. And if you threw in, he'd turn and look, what was that? So I learned to play straight ahead, dead steady.
Gene Vincent
I worked with Gene Vincent at the Yellow Belly Drag Strip in Grand Prairie, of all places. I did several gigs with Gene Vincent, and Gene Vincent was a real rocker. His first big hit was Bebop-A-Lula, and then Lotta Lovin'. And although I did not play on those records, I did play with Gene Vincent, and that's another learning experience.
Well, now, if you'd have just said Jimmy Reed and Gene Vincent, your story would have been great. Actually, you mentioned your mom and dad.
Well, they used to follow a kid in Dallas, a group called Trini Lopez and the Big Beats. My mom said to Trini one night, if you ever need a drummer, give us a call because our son's a drummer. Sure enough, the phone rang. A couple weeks later, my mom said, he can go, yeah. So she said, Trini Lopez is on the phone and they want you to play with them at Jimmy's Club tonight in Dallas. So he's gonna hire me for a couple of weeks. And I was with Trini for 8 years. And so that was a real turning point in my life.
Wow. Now, how cool is that where your mom would say, hey, if you ever need a drummer, she meets somebody at and Trini Lopez was not a star by then. He was a local Dallas group at the time, a local Dallas, not a group even. It was just Trini Lopez ultimately. And when they worked out here in L.A. at the Whiskey or whatever that club was, I forget the name of the club now. But when they worked, they just worked as a duo. Drums and Trini. How cool. So, well, let's carry the story on a little bit more. That caught me by surprise. Here's some more of the story of Mickey Jones and Trini Lopez. Yeah, If I Had a Hammer. That's right. And that's Mickey Jones playing. I love the part. If I had a bell, I'd ring ding, 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 da, ding, da, ding. He's on the bell of the cymbal, and that's Mickey Jones. And what a drummer. Oh, man. People ask me, is he a good drummer? Was he a good drummer? Whatever. No, this guy was a great drummer. You do not play on 17 gold records with such a wide variety of stars if you're not a great drummer. And Mickey was a great drummer. His pocket was second to none. The feel was, and you saw it there when he was just sort of just demonstrating that, So, Jan McWhorter watching. He never met a stranger for sure. Amen to that. No question about it. And he was a great man. You're going to see. I mean, you're going to be blown away, this guy. And, well, here we go. Here's more Mickey Jones with Trini Lopez, and they carried on. So his mom tells him, hey, and so he gets him his first gig with Trini, and then 8 years later sets the stage for an amazing career. It goes like this. Sure it does. How about this one? Oh, no.
So Trini drove to L.A., got a job at a little place called the Ye Little Club in Beverly Hills. And then I moved to L.A. and moved in with Trini. And I got a job working as a page at NBC. Trini got this job at a little club called PJ's. He said, I want you to work at PJ's. So I was working weekends, and I was making more money on the weekend at PJ's than I was all week long at NBC. So I started working 6 nights a week with Trini at PJ's. And then when we recorded the first album, Trini Lopez Live at PJ's, his career exploded.
Tonight from New York, the Ed Sullivan Show.
Now, in introducing Trini Lopez, when Trini asked you to sing along with him, I want you to join right in because he'll enjoy your chorale work and you'll get a great kick out of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is the newest recording star, Trini Lopez.
So does it feel like yesterday?
Yeah, kind of fun to look at that.
Now you guys are playing PJs as a duo, just drums and Trini on guitar.
Right.
And doing what you guys do. Well, something happened because it really ignited there. And that first record was just the two of you, and it went over the moon. I don't know how many copies it sold, but it just kept selling.
Well, it was in the millions. We went back later to England on a package show. It was called a GAC, General Artists Corporation package show. And the artists were Brooke Benton, Timmy Euro, Leslie Gore, Dion, and Trini. We flew into Heathrow Airport. We had 2 Rolls Royces pick us up. So we hired this little group called the Rolling Stones to open for us. And I thought they were okay, you know, they could play a little blues, but nothing to write home about. I mean, they don't really have a big career ahead of them.
Yeah. The Rolling Stones as their opening act. You know, pretty good gig that his mom got him on that thing. And then Trini and, can you imagine, though, playing just a duo, too? And did you hear did you hear Mickey on the Ed Sullivan Show? Man, he was rocking. Woo! Cool stuff. So we've got, well, now, then we're going to jump around a little bit. I'm not going to do this sequentially, chronologically tonight. I'm just going to jump around and give you bits and pieces of Mickey's amazing talent. And so you saw some of his early drumming there with Trini and Jimmy Reed, pretty good, and Gene Vincent, pretty cool stuff too. But let's move over. So when he was around 40 years old, he transitioned after he had played on 17 gold records, played with some of the biggest stars in the world in some of the most historic venues and concerts in the world. And we're going to get into Beatles and Sinatra and on Bob Dylan and the First Edition, Elvis, all kinds of cool stuff. But he became an actor. Now, how many people, after a super successful career as a musician, midstream, put that behind them and start a whole nother career as an actor and then go on to do over 80 movies, 500 TV shows, commercials that you've seen him in so many. But I'm going to show you what I think is just one of his shining moments as an actor. And this is a little short that he did called The Last Real Cowboys. And this is sort of an edited down version just so I can get it. Oh, yeah, Gary Swan's watching. Yeah, that was your buddy, Jerry McWhorter. By the way, for those of you who are watching, Jerry McWhorter, who produced and directed and was the host on that one-man show with Mickey Jones and who was a dear friend of Mickey's, is going to be on the show with us a little later tonight. So get ready. A couple other guests are going to pop in. But back to The Last Real Cowboys. This is a short that he did with Billy Bob Thornton. And it was produced and directed by Jeff Lester. Executive producer is Susan Anton. And my dear friend, Michael Cuneo, did the music on this. Our dear friend, because a bunch of people who watch this are friends with Michael Cuneo, who's a brilliant guitar player and who I've known, half a century almost. So this is that short. This is Mickey Jones, Billy Bob Thornton, and The Last Real Cowboys. This is about 6 minutes and change. So this is really, really cool. Check this out.
Beans taste different. You cook them different? You got any bacon in them? I like bacon. Planning on doing this the rest of your life, Tar?
What, eat beans?
No, punch cows.
Well, man, find something to do. You ought to stick with it, else he drifts.
You remember when we used to skip?
Skip what?
No, skip. Like skipping, like hopping around, like when we was youngins. I don't know what's got a hold of me lately. I just been wondering about things, you know, just
what?
Well, you remember that old Chinaman we run across? He's carrying on about that Buddha fella just before you shot him.
Well, he was crazy. I just got him out of his misery.
Well, yeah, but remember he's saying something about the child inside all of us and how we just forgot to listen to him. Well, it made me think back when I was a kid, like before I was punching cows. And I can remember this one particular day, we was all skipping, and all the other kids was making fun of me and laughing because I didn't skip too good in my little boots, but I didn't mind.
Exactly what the hell are you going on about?
Well, I was remembering how to skip.
Well, I don't give a toot about that. We're sitting around a campfire. For God's sake, you're a cowboy. Born in the saddle. You'll die with your boots on. This is embarrassing.
Don't you ever think about it, Tar? What you was before you got to be you? What you will be?
Will be when? I am what I was and what I always will be.
Don't you ever think about doing something different than this? Being something else?
Why don't you just leave it?
I bet you do. I bet you still got that little kid kicking around down in there. You know you do. You stuff way down deep inside. See, but you don't want to think about it. And that ain't nothing but denial. You see, Tar, you're denying yourself the opportunity of a richer, fuller lifestyle because you're afraid to move beyond that with which you are already comfortable. That's very common in men our age.
Don't you think I know about that? The West don't want an eclectic cowboy. The West wants me.
How come we don't skip no more?
You know, I'll kill you if I have to.
How come we don't skip?
Skipping's for little bitty kids.
And I used to like skipping, and I bet I still would.
Yeah, and you get shot for it, too. Or worse than that, laughed at.
I didn't mind getting laughed at when I was a kid.
You either keep your hole shut or I'll shut it for you.
I ain't punching cows no more, Tar. That's it. I'm gonna skip.
You're gonna what?
I said I'm gonna skip.
What?
Yep. He's calling out to me, and I gotta listen to him.
Who?
My inner child. He's saying, skip slow, for you can't remember how to. I gotta skip, Tar. I think you ought to do it with me.
You so much as bunny hop, and I'll cut your heart out.
I gotta be me. I gotta be different. I gotta skip. Yes, I'm free. Feels mighty good. Come on. Come on. Let's go. Saw that.
What? I didn't do nothing.
Oh, you gotta let him go. Come on, Tar. Feels mighty good. I'm an old cowhand on the Rio Grande.
I hate you for this.
Come on. I like it.
What the sandhill they doing down there?
They're skipping.
Nah.
Yeah. Cowboys are skipping.
That ain't skipping.
They're skipping. I remember when we was kids, we used to skip around. Have a lot of fun.
Well, I can tell you one thing. Mickey Jones is still skipping, and he skipped through his life. I'll tell you what, he always had that inner child was front and center in everything he did. He was a bigger-than-life personality with a bigger-than-life heart. And, Steve Chaney, I know Mickey's best acting work ever. I agree with you. He was just brilliant in that. And I watched, and by the way, Steve Chaney, I'm going to put that back up. Steve Chaney was one of Mickey's best friends, and they had known each other for decades and decades, over 40 years. And Steve went with him so many places. Yeah, that was great, Bert. I'll tell you what, it was a powerful performance, and it was very poignant for me personally, and I can tell you why. The night before Mickey died, I was over visiting him. As I said, he only lived, less than a mile from me here in Simi Valley, California. And he had a hospital bed in his living room there, and it was all set up. And his wife, Phyllis, who was a saint, was his caregiver there. And, of course, he had a nurse come in regularly and help him. But he was bedridden for a long time. And the night before he passed away, when I was leaving, Phyllis gave me that and said, "Have you ever seen this?" And I said, "No." And I came and watched it that night, and it was it drove me to tears. And then the next day, I found out that he had passed away, and so that will forever have a special meaning for me personally. But it's so powerful, wow! And Billy Bob, and by the way, Mickey was in Sling Blade with Billy Bob. I think what we're going to do, let's see. Let's play a song. Now, Mickey loved Jesus. Mickey was a regular at Jammin' Java when we would have it, and when we would have it live at the church for years and years. And Mickey would come over there all the time. And his favorite song was Amazing Grace. He loved Jesus, and sometimes I would get him up to introduce the song. And as a matter of fact, here I'll show you a couple cool pictures from Jammin' Java. Let's see if I've got them over here. Here we go. And I saw Eddie Hedges is watching. Okay, there is some of the Jammin' Java gang, and there's Eddie. That's me on the far right as you look at the picture. And then that's Eddie Hedges, who's watching along with us tonight. And he was there a lot with when Mickey was there. My brother Rex. And that's his. And he loved Craig Pilo's drumming. He's got his arm around Craig Pilo right here in the front. And Craig, he was pretty much the president of the Craig Pilo fan club. Let's see here if I can go over here to some of these other pictures here. So that's Jammin' Java. And there's another Jammin' Java picture with more gang of Jammin' Java. Jammin' Java was a Monday night jam session at my church. It was kind of a coffee house vibe. We would have a trio, and then a lot of different singers and musicians would come in and play, and Mickey was there. And Pastor Chuck was front and center of all those nights. And there's Mickey playing drums. I'm sure that this has got to be the last time that Mickey played drums. And he rocked, I'll tell you, at Jammin' Java. There's another shot of him playing drums. There we are. Oh, and there's Eddie Hedges in the front singing, my brother Rex and I, and then Mickey playing. There's some more. Rick Fiorabracci. Mike, oh gosh. Sorry, Mike. Last name was escaping me. Pilo and Mickey and I. There's Mickey and I in front of my big old Leslie there. Oh, and I love this picture. That's Pilo, Rick Fiorabracci, and me. We're doing some kind of serious stuff, and there's Mickey Jones. You can see him from the back here, wearing his biker T-shirt and his ponytail flowing. So that's some Jammin' Java pictures. His favorite song was Amazing Grace. He and his wife Phyllis had gone to Israel and they have home movies that I watched of their trip to Israel that were just fascinating. As a matter of fact, Neil Wilmon is saying, super nice guy. He always loved Paul's Italian Villa. Yes. Mickey was our local celebrity, and he did some commercials for some of the local businesses. And one of the commercials he did regularly was for Paul's Italian Villa. And he also did commercials for Jim Tire Service. And so that's cool. His favorite song, though, as I was saying, was Amazing Grace. And he would talk about, the story behind it, which is such an amazing story. But I'm not going to waste too much time talking anymore. I'm going to play a version of Amazing Grace with my friend and I, Warren Ham, and I doing this a while back. And so check this out. Amazing Grace. You all know this song. This is with the super talented Warren Ham, who just happens to play in a band with a guy named Ringo Starr.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. What was grace that taught my heart to feel? And grace my fears relieve. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. when we first begun, yeah.
So we toured all over France. We did 8 weeks at the Olympia Theater in Paris. And the Olympia Theater is an old school theater. I mean, it's the place to play in Paris. We had a little group open for us called the Beatles, and they were the coolest guys, man. We got to hang out with them every day, every night. I could tell you stories, we've run out of time, but getting to meet the Beatles and hang out with the Beatles was very, very cool. This is my old 8mm home movie camera. I just walked up in the balcony one night and did this shoot of them, and then I did a little bit from the side of the stage. That picture was actually taken for them. I walked in the artist entrance. Ringo stuck his head out and he said, "Mickey, you got a minute?" And I went, "Well, yeah." And I walked over and he said, "Could we take a picture with you?" I said, "Well, sure." So I walked in their dressing room and gathered around. So they shot that photo for them. We're doing that photo and just goofing off. They said, "Hey, would you sign a picture to each one of us?" So I said, "Well, sure." So I go get a picture and I'm signing a picture to Ringo, okay, to John. And about the time I finished, they gave me a picture that they had all signed to me. And I sold that picture on eBay. Well, I kept it on my desk for 35 years with dog-eared corners and everything. I never framed it. I never did anything with it. But before I sold it on eBay, I scanned it so I could make a couple of really good copies. And I have a copy of it now framed on my wall, and I sold it for almost $8,000. And that was before George passed away, so imagine what it's worth now.
Yeah. You guys were together for 2 months, or
2 months.
2 months, every day.
Every day.
Which means sometimes.
Well, we had 1 day off. We were off on Monday. And I would fly with John Lennon Sunday night back to London, and I would stay the weekend with him and his wife Cynthia. And he took me to a bootmaker called Anello and David in Charing Cross Road, and they were the Beatle boots. So I would go in, every time I'd go to London, I'd go over there, and I'd have these custom boots made. They'd draw a picture of your foot, and they were perfect. And I'd get them in blue suede and black suede, and you know how much those boots were? Custom-made boots up to here, zipper up the middle. $17 for custom-made boots.
And
they're probably a little more today.
For $8,000 too, huh?
Yeah.
My favorite Beatles story. The tour is over, and they've got news for you. They're going to America.
We had closed the show, and we're both going our separate ways. We went to Holland, and the boys were going back to repack in London, and then they were going to New York to do the Ed Sullivan Show. And at dinner, I remember John Lennon saying, "You know, we're doing some little show, the Ed Sullivan Show." I said, "Well, you know, that's a good show to do." He said, "Yeah, but you don't understand. We want to do a show where we'd be seen in California." You got to realize, New York is about the size of Great Britain. I mean, that's all they had to relate to. And I said, "Oh, no, you'll be seen in California. Just network all over the United States. You'll be seen in California." So they go to New York. We're in Holland. And the only English-speaking radio I can get is the Radio Luxembourg. So I'm laying in bed. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning. I got Radio Luxembourg on, and they break in on the news with all this crowd. And I went, "Oh, my God, who got assassinated?" Because we had a little period there, and the announcer came on and said, "Well, that's the scene here at Idlewild Airport as the Beatles landed in New York City." I'm going, "What?" I couldn't believe it. And they did. They took this country by storm. I'm kind of glad I was in there on the ground floor and got to be friends with these guys, not just acquaintances. They were great guys. They're just the best.
Now, how cool is that? Now, if you notice that picture, I wonder, I can't get back to it, but they all signed that picture of the Beatles, and they said, Mickey Jones, you are the worst drummer in the USA. And I thought that was, what a classic picture, you know. And I also love the fact that they wanted to take a picture with him, you know, because they were the opening act. Now, so when he was with Trini, then they toured UK, and the Rolling Stones were the Rolling Stones were the opening act. And then when they played at the Olympia Theater in Paris for those 3 weeks, was it 3 weeks or 3 months? I can't remember now, but it was the Beatles were his opening act, and then they left from there. That would, I think it was January '64 would be the timeline. And then they left from there, flew to New York, and we're on the Ed Sullivan Show, and the world has never been the same since. So that's just one tidbit of Mickey Jones being in a historic moment in rock and roll history. And you're going to hear some more stuff here. So next, what do we have? We've got a couple friends of mine have come on, and friends of Mickey's as well. And I'm going to introduce them to you one at a time. So let's see here. We'll go over here. Well, the first young man, his name is Edgar Struble, and he was the music director for Kenny Rogers for many, many years, decades. And he's known Mickey, of course, via Kenny Rogers and other stuff as well. So I'm going to bring him on. Let's see here. There's I have to hit this button right here and assign you over here. Oops. Edgar, we're going to assign you right there. Edgar Struble in the house. Hey, baby.
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks so much for coming on this show, because I know this is it's special for me, and I know it's special for you as well. Let's see if I hit this button, what happens. Ah, there you are. There's all of you. Sounds like a song. And before we bring on, well, actually, I know that you have, you could probably go on for hours, Mickey Jones stories. Give me your best Mickey Jones story here. Not to put you on the spot.
I can't say that this is a monument in music history, but in 1996, I was music director on a show that was broadcast on the Nashville Network. It was a daily show, Monday through Friday, called Primetime Country. And I was kind of the Doc Severinsen of country music for a year.
For many years, actually, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, just 1 year on that show. And that show lasted a couple more years. But anyway, it was a great, fun show. And Mickey Jones had just co-starred in Tin Cup. I can't remember the actor's name.
Kevin Costner.
Yes, exactly.
Uh-huh.
And somehow our publicist his publicist must have reached out to our talent department, and lo and behold, Mickey Jones was going to be a guest on our show. And he walked in the door with a guitar. And I thought, well, what is this? He's a drummer.
And obviously you had known him so well, and so.
Well, sure, but I didn't know he was coming until like the day before he was booked, and it was such a hoot. And he had written a song, and it was, I can't remember what it was, but it was quite good.
It was it Double Bogey? Let me interrupt you. I think it might have been Double Bogey Blues.
Maybe it was,
because that was a song that he had written for that movie, and he used to play guitar and sing it. Yes.
Well, it had to be it then, because yeah. And so, but he was such a lover of music and such a sweet guy. And I had a smoking band on that show.
I remember that.
Smoking band. And so in the middle of the song, he's playing this song on live television, and he starts listening to the band, and he forgets the lyrics.
He was not used to being in that front microphone, was he?
No, he wasn't.
Yeah.
But and what a sweetheart that guy was. My goodness, we had some precious moments with Mickey Jones.
And well,
He
let's
just
bring
has a
on the
special
other
place in
guest.
my
By the
heart.
way, I have to
Yeah,
say,
let's bring him on.
you, by the way, Edgar Struble, to the audience who doesn't know who you are, everybody in the music business knows who you are, but you were the music director for Kenny Rogers for many, many years. You are a great Hammond organ player, keyboard player, music director, arranger, all that kind of stuff. And
Thank
you
you.
are the music director for the American Music Awards for many, many years now, and and for the Academy of Country Music Awards as well.
That's right.
You are a busy boy.
Thank you.
And so this next guest, I've known you for a long time, brother, but I've known this guy way longer because this guy and I have been playing music together since we were teenagers. When we were teenagers, we were traveling all over the country, and he ended up being Kenny Rogers' drummer for 25 years or thereabouts, and his name is Mr. Lynn Hammond, coming in from Nashville, Tennessee. Lynn Hammond.
Hello. Hey, Robbie, Edgar.
Hi,
How are you guys?
Good to see you.
We're getting
Good
the
to
band
see you
back
guys.
together, you guys. Let's go on the road.
Oh, my goodness. Do you have a bus?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do, I think. By the way, and Edgar's in Michigan right now, but you're bi-coastal of sorts. You go Michigan to L.A., right? You go back and forth
Right.
between.
Right.
And I'm gonna give the audience a little bit of your history, because the people who watch this show know that I'm from Litchfield, Illinois, and they know that I've been with Frankie Valli for a zillion years. And you, my friend Lynn Hammond, I've known since we were both teenagers, and we started
That's right.
playing music. I mean, you might not know this, Edgar. Lynn was in a band with my brother Rex. He was playing keyboards in Rex's band before we started working together. I had another band, and Rex was still a little kid. And Lynn was playing keyboards in that band. You remember Lynn?
Oh, my God, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that tells you the shortage of keyboard players that were available. That's all I have to say.
But then Lynn and Rex and I, we started playing in all different kinds of scenarios. And Lynn and I, for a long time, we were driving back and forth Lynn is he's from a suburb of Litchfield called Gillespie, Illinois. And
He's joking, Edgar. It's not a suburb.
You know what? By the way, we have a lot of people from Litchfield who watch this show, Lynn. So,
well, hello, Litchfieldians. Litchfieldians? How do you say that?
Something like that. Sounds good. Litchfieldians.
Yeah.
Including your parole officer, Lynn.
Yeah. But then, so we traveled all over. Oh, Pete Lausches is he's from Mont Olive, and he watches this show.
Hello, Pete.
He says hi to Lynn.
I remember Pete. Hello, Pete.
Yep. And so Lynn and Rex and I start running all over the country. Then we ended up coming, in a variety of scenarios. But Lynn and I, for 6 nights a week, we made that hour drive from the Litchfield, Gillespie area to St. Louis, playing 6 nights a week and listening to jazz music on the way home always.
Yeah.
But then we all ended up out here, of course. I guess everybody does somehow. New York, L.A., or Nashville. And so we ended up here, and then Lynn was with us with Frankie Valli. We played in a lot of different things. But then Lynn got the job with Kenny Rogers and played drums. Was it 25 years you did that gig?
It was a little over 23, Robbie.
And it only seemed like 25, right?
Actually, it went by in a flash in hindsight. It really, it doesn't seem there was that many years. So much, as you know, when you do so much traveling, it goes by, and when you reflect on it, it just doesn't seem like it was that long, but it was.
So did Edgar hire you for the gig?
Edgar, they were, make a long story short, they flew me out to Pennsylvania to audition, and the next day I flew home to L.A., and by that evening, Edgar called me at home and asked me if I wanted to join a band. And I said, absolutely, yes. So
he said, what? Are you nuts?
And you were living here in Simi Valley at the time.
Living not far from you, Robbie. That's right.
And you and Mickey knew each other out here, of course, then.
Well, here's the funny story, Robbie. I never met Mickey until I had the job with Kenny.
Oh, that's wild.
We
yeah.
we were playing at a casino in Laughlin, Nevada.
Uh-huh.
It was an outdoor venue, and Mickey came to the show. So before the show, I went to the where we would rehearse, and I introduced myself to Mickey. And you remember, Robbie, Mickey did a commercial for a restaurant in Simi called Paul's Italian Villa.
I remember it well.
Mickey
would
be in the
restaurant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I love
and
that.
Mickey was in the booth in the restaurant, and he was, telling about everyone come to Paul's Italian Villa. So I told Mickey that story, and he got the biggest kick out of it. And then, I had to go get ready for the show, and I told Kenny I just met Mickey out for the first time outside, and Kenny said, Lynn, he said, once you met Mickey, you made a friend for life. And that's true. That is true. I thought, what a neat thing for someone to say about, someone. And that was true. Mickey we never saw each other a lot or talked a lot, but he would call out of the blue, or I would call him, and it was just like you'd never, like you'd known each other your whole lives. So he was a sweet, wonderful man.
No
and
doubt.
A great drummer, by the way.
And he was nobody rich. I mean, he didn't have all that flash, but man, his pocket was deep, wasn't it?
He had a great feel. He kept great time. I just brushed up on Kenny's autobiography book, and he talks about Mickey.
Wow.
When Kenny, Edgar knows probably most of this story, but when Kenny and Terry Williams and those people from the New Christie Minstrels formed the first edition, they didn't have a drummer.
Right.
So they were asking around town, and Mickey's name came up multiple times. Of course, they told him he played with Trini Lopez and just got off a Bob Dylan tour. And so Kenny says that they rehearsed once, and everybody knew right away he was the guy, because he was rock solid. He was a hard-hitting rock drummer. He had great time, and he was kind of flamboyant. Twirl his sticks and stuff, and he just fit that group. That's what that group needed, coming from a kind of a folk group background.
Sure. And
So-
Mickey, in this one-man show that Jerry McWhorter did with him, he talks about his time with the first edition, but of course, he talked about his Bob Dylan thing. And I think maybe what we'll do is let's take a minute and segue into the Bob Dylan thing, because that's a historic tour that he did, playing with Bob Dylan when the 1966 World Tour, when Bob Dylan went electric. And there's some just amazing stuff. Here, let's go to this clip here. Hang in, guys. You guys good for hanging for a few more minutes?
Good.
Yes.
So check this out. This is Mickey Jones talking about Bob Dylan, touring with Bob Dylan.
How did you get from Johnny Rivers to Bob Dylan?
Bob Dylan came in the Whiskey A Go-Go, and I walked over kind of to the booth where he was sitting, and I kind of walked over, had my Coke. That's all I drank, Coke. And I'm checking him out, and he sees me, and he motions me to come here. So I go over, and we sit down for a few minutes. He said, I really want to talk to you. He said, I want to record with you. And I said, well, yeah, I'd love to do that. He said, you're my favorite rock and roll drummer in the world, and I want to record with you. They came to LA. We started rehearsing for the first Electric World Tour. Robbie Robertson, Garth Hudson, Rick Danko, Richard Manuel, and Mickey Jones. That was the group. And after about 6 weeks on the road of nothing but booze, they hated our guts. The media the next day in the paper, it would say, Bob Dylan's acoustic set was pristine and perfect. You could hear a pin drop. But when they came out with those electric guitars and drums, they were just, the band was too loud. Bob Dylan should send the band back to America. The band sucks. So after about 4 weeks of that, we decided to take the name The Band. So that's how we called ourselves The Band.
Let's play a clip here.
We were getting booed off the stage every night. But yet Rolling Stone magazine called it the greatest rock and roll tour in the history.
They were making some films, doing a lot of filming and documenting it too.
They were. D.A. Pennebaker, Don Pennebaker, who did Don't Look Back. Our film is called Eat the Document. And it's a rather Bob Dylan obtuse film. But the whole thing is, something happened when we were in Manchester, England. Somebody from the stage yelled Judas, and somebody on the stage yelled, play effing loud.
I don't believe you. You're a liar.
And for 30 years, everybody thought it was me. It wasn't me. I didn't do it. I know Bob didn't do it because I'm not much more than this from Bob. My guess is it's one of the roadies. We had 6 British roadies on tour with us, doing all the equipment, and they're standing by, they're all over the stage in case somebody needs something. And I really believe that it was one of our roadies standing up for us because we were getting booed and hated after the Judas shout.
With your pencil in your hand, you see somebody naked, you say, who is that man? You try so hard, but you don't understand just what you say when you get home. Because something is happening here, but you don't know what it is. Do you, Mr. John?
How did that tour end?
We came back to New York. I stayed a couple days with Barry Feinstein, who was the Time Life photographer on the tour. He was married to Mary Travers of Peter, Paul, and Mary. So I split, went back to LA because we were going to have a month off. Then we were going to go back to New York, rehearse for 1 week. Then we were going to do a concert at Shea Stadium. Would be Peter, Paul, and Mary doing the first half, and we would do the second half electric. And then the next day, we were going to Moscow. We were going to be the first American rock and rollers to go to Moscow. And about a week or 4 or 5 days before we were to go to New York to rehearse for Shea Stadium, Bob Dylan crashed his motorcycle in front of Albert Grossman's house at Woodstock, broke his neck. I get a call. It's Bob Dylan. He said, you don't need to come to New York Monday. And I said, no, we're not going to rehearse. He said, no, we're not going to do, we canceled Shea Stadium and Moscow because I am in traction in the hospital and I don't know when I'll play again. So all bets were off, but here's the stand-up guy Bob Dylan is. He paid me my salary for another year. And that's when I started working extra, trying to be an actor. And because I was getting my Bob Dylan salary, I was able to go to the bottom rung of the ladder in this business out here.
Fascinating, huh?
Great story.
Amazing.
I mean, and that is a historic moment in rock history, especially that Bob Dylan tour when he went electric and he alienated so many of his audience.
Yeah, but he was right.
He was right. It worked out in the end, didn't it? And then and that's also, of course, the band. I know you guys know, but to share with our audience, the band went on to have their own amazing successes. They were called the Band, and Levon Helm was the drummer, of course. And Mickey, actually, they were all Ronnie Hawkins' backup band. All those guys.
From Canada,
Canada,
right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks.
That's right. And then if you notice on that one, it was Bob Dylan and the Hawks. He started out with that, but then apparently, I don't know all the ins and outs, but Levon Helm apparently did not like the idea of, because it was Levon Helm and the Hawks then, after it was Ronnie, and he was the lead singer. And he did not necessarily like the idea of Bob Dylan and the Hawks. And so, for whatever reason, it didn't work out, and so they brought in Mickey Jones as the drummer. There was another drummer in the midst of that, too, named Sandy Konikoff, who was from Buffalo or from Canada.
Yeah.
Oh, Robbie's brother.
Oh.
Robbie Konikoff's brother.
Yes. And Ross Konikoff's, the trumpet player from New York, his cousin, actually.
Okay.
So, oh, darn it, my Hammond just went off over here. I'll have to turn that back on. But I digress. So, so tell me about when Kenny would come around. But I know one thing, what he always called Kenny. It wasn't Kenny, right?
Kenneth
Ray.
He always called him Kenneth. And wasn't it fascinating that they were both born in the same hospital in Houston?
I didn't know that. I didn't know
I
that.
remember hearing that. Yeah.
Did he ever give you any drum tips, Lynn? Hey, you're not
Who,
playing
Mickey?
the Ruby right or something, yeah.
No, he was always very kind and complimentary. He was, he wouldn't do that, but he cared. He was a big presence when he was around. You've been around him. He's very flamboyant and a lot of personality, but very kind, very kind.
Yeah.
It wasn't that he was flamboyant. I think he was just a big, wonderful, lovable personality. I think I associate flamboyance with some sort of decadence, and he wasn't about that at all. He was just a super nice guy, and it just radiated when he walked into a room.
Well, physically he was a big guy, and his personality was even bigger than that, and his heart was the biggest of all, and it just jumped out with why everybody loved him so much.
Yeah.
I find, and it's always fascinated me about Mickey that he had such a successful career. I mean, we're talking, you're talking about Bob Dylan, Trini Lopez, Johnny Rivers, who we haven't even talked about yet, Kenny Rogers in the first edition. I mean, 17 gold records. That's a pretty good resume for a drummer. And then you say, oh, okay, I'm done with this stuff. I'm going to become an actor.
I know. It's amazing. and huge movies. He was in some giant movies.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I have some pictures here. Let me see what happens if we go with some of these Music Biz pictures here. I got to go down here. I'm like the chief cook and bottle washer tonight, being my own engineer. If I go over here, let's see here. Ah!
Oh.
And it's so sad now that Kenny is gone, too, or Kenneth, should I say.
I know. Yeah.
That's, one of the things about when Mickey, the last few years of his life, he spent a lot of time in the hospital, in and out of the hospitals. I'll tell you what, there was one, and I'd go visit him in the hospital, and we would pray, and we would talk, and we would tell lies, as he would like to say, And one of the great stories, and the nurses would come in, and I forget what the number is. I say, okay, be careful with this guy, because he's killed over 100 people. And then Mickey would say 143, to be exact. And then we would milk it a little bit, and then tell the nurse, well, but that was all in the movies.
Right.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, he would always play. He would play, a biker. And he always came across in the movies like this really mean, bad guy, and he was total opposite of that. But he played that character so well.
No question about that.
Yeah.
But now I do have a clip here that he talks about the first edition, and he talks about how he first met them. And now this was of course the last in his legacy of musical experiences, musical adventures. So we're jumping around chronologically, but check this out. I think you'll dig this. And again, this is Jerry McWhorter, who's going to be on with us a little later here tonight. But this is he and Mickey talking about the first edition.
He said, would you come and at least listen to them? So I said, okay. So I go to this little club in Huntington Beach, drive all the way to Huntington Beach, and I hear 4 of the purest voices I've ever heard. Incredible harmony. And I went back and met them, and it was Mike Settle, Terry Williams, Thelma Camacho, and Kenny Rogers. And they were called the First Editions.
I think it's love.
So you made an interesting distinction there that's important to note, is that the name of the group was the First Edition.
We had a couple of big hit records. Just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in. Well, we had just coming off of a song that Mike Settle wrote called But You Know I Love You. Dolly Parton recorded, great record. And it was a big hit for us, top 10 record. We're then in the studio. Jimmy Bowen was our producer. He said, guys, we have a problem. We have about 20 minutes of studio time left. I have to deliver this album in 10 days. You're going out on the road tomorrow for 6 weeks, and we're 1 song short. Do you have anything that we could do in 20 minutes? So Kenny pops up and said, well, we have this old Mel Tillis song we found on a Roger Miller album, and we're doing it in the show, and it gets a great response. So he said, well, can you just run a little bit of it down for me and let me hear it? So I kick it off. You painted up your lips and rolled and curled your tinted hair. Well, we didn't even get through the first verse. He said, whoa, we're cutting that right now. So we cut that song with 1 take of the instrumental track and 2 vocal passes. It's just on an album called The First Edition 69. It was a filler, just to fill up some space. A radio station in Boston starts playing this song, every other song. The switchboards are lit up like Christmas. And Mo Austin, the president, calls us in and says, it's going crazy for this record, and we can't release 2 records in the same release window. So who sang lead on this? Well, that was Kenneth. So Mo said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep Once Again She's All Alone right where it was. We're working on it. But we're going to release Ruby under the name Kenny Rogers and the First Edition. It could have very easily been Mickey Jones and the First Edition, which I think is a lot better title.
Has a
ring
to
it. But as they say, the rest is history. And sometimes they'll be playing Just Dropped In on the radio, and they'll say, that was Kenny Rogers. I say, take another look at that label, will you? Because it just says the First Edition. But that's how we accidentally became Kenny Rogers in the First Edition.
Cool stuff.
Yeah.
You must have played those songs a million times, both you gentlemen.
Oh, yeah. Every night, as a matter of fact, right in here.
Before I left, I was there for 15 years. I estimated 2,000 times we played that tune. And Lynn's has played it probably double that.
Yeah. Isn't that a cool drum part, too, that he's got in that thing?
Yes.
It is. And it's probably not a lot of drummers out there listening. I don't know, maybe so, but.
Oh, I think we have a lot of drummers. Yeah. Drummers.
The recorded version and the way Mickey played it live is different than the way Kenny played it as Kenny Rogers on stage. We would play it as a train field, with with brushes on a snare drum. Mickey played it with a brush in one hand and a stick in his left, and he hit the backbeat on 2 and 4 with a stick, and then the brush going. So it had that backbeat on 2 and 4. So it was a cool little motor that happened throughout that song.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Inside baseball here.
Well, you can find some old first edition YouTube videos and showing Mickey playing that. But it was a lot slower, during Kenny would always want things a little faster. As Edgar could attest to, right, Edgar?
Well, most artists do, don't they?
That's like we used to say, the tempo is in the ears of the employer.
The ears of the employer, that's right.
That's a good one. Hey, I have a so Kenny then after, Kenny, what an amazing career that he had, and it's so sad that he's gone now, and I know that you guys both miss him, and I'm sure everybody that's associated with him in that whole camp, all you guys were there for so many years. Such a bad. As a matter of fact, Edgar, I remember you and I and Chuck Jacobs. Chuck was in town, and we went over to hang out at Mickey's house one night when he was sick still, and you and I and Chuck, and we hung out and just told. And then his wife came in, and she said, "Well, what are you guys doing?" She says, "We've been telling a lot of lies here."
Phyllis, what a sweetheart.
She is. And hopefully and prayerfully she's watching right now as we talk.
Hey, Phyllis.
Hello, Phyllis.
Love you, sweetie.
Yes.
I hope you're enjoying this.
There's something interesting. Then Kenny, after he had all that success with the first edition, then kind of started, not back at square one, but he was not on top of the world when he decided to go solo. And you were there, right, Edgar? I'd love you to tell the audience kind of your take on, or just tell them the story about how you guys got started.
Sure. And it's a really interesting story. Kenny was going to move to Nashville. He was being managed by, he was going to be managed by a guy named Shug Baggett, who was kind of notorious around Nashville. And so Kenny wanted to hire a Nashville band, and he ended up hiring these 3 guys who were playing in a Holiday Inn, plus a guitar player from another band north of town. And I had been sitting in with those same 3 guys for a while. So he came to town thinking he was going to move to town, and he hired a Nashville band because he was going to be based out of Nashville. But for some reason, he changed his mind and literally turned the moving vans around in the middle of the country and hauled his stuff back to Los Angeles. But he had committed to this Nashville band, and so he continued with that. And so this band was called Turning Point, and they went on the road with him and this other guitar player. And about 5 months after that, they called me in to see if I could become the 3rd keyboard player. And of course, I took the job. I was thrilled to do that because even though he was kind of starting over as Kenny Rogers, he still had not a lot of credibility as Kenny Rogers in the first edition. And it was a prestigious job, and certainly a step up in my career path after coming out of a rock and roll rhythm and blues bar band.
But I will interject and throw this into you. You guys were not touring and playing arenas like it happened in a couple years, right? You were in station wagons,
we were playing the
right?
Lounge in Harris and Tahoe, and with Dobie Gray, while Glenn Campbell and Olivia Newton-John were in the main room. And I can remember doing the midnight set there, and there were 3 or 4 people in the audience, and Kenny would sit on a stool and read the lyrics to Lucille. Wow. Yeah. Because he hadn't memorized them yet.
Hey, we've got a couple cool pictures here. I'm going to show some more pictures. Mickey and Kenny and that whole camp here. Let's see if I can pull this up here in a second. Here we go. This one. Well, there isn't that at that Kenny Rogers 50th anniversary show. Is Lynn?
Yes.
And that was a fascinating show. Here, I have to do this.
Those are old members of the first edition. Keyboard players Gene Lorenzo, and that's Mary Arnold, with the tambourine. That was Roger Miller's wife.
Uh-huh.
The guitar player just on the left side of Kenny is, I believe, is Terry Williams. And the guitar player, the acoustic guitar player is Mike Settle.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, that's Mickey on the drums.
Uh-huh. And then here's another. This is that 50th anniversary tour, Lynn. You're in there. Are you in there, Edgar? I don't
believe so. Mm-mm. No, I'm not.
And that's Kenny Rogers and Smokey Robinson is there. Lionel Richie is there.
Oh, wow.
That's a great show. People should go on and see that show. Kenny Rogers, the first 50 years.
Yeah, I see the Oak Ridge Boys in there too. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess
Dolly and Alison Krauss, Billy Dean, Linda Davis. A lot of. The only that surprised me was Chris Isaacs.
Huh.
Kind of surprised me he was on the show. I never did know the connection there between he and Kenny.
Tell us about that show, Lynn.
Well, it was just to honor Kenny's 50 years in show business, and we did it at, I believe, the MGM on the East Coast. Where is that, Robbie? You played there with Frankie, I know.
Oh, in Atlantic City.
Around Foxwoods. There's an MGM there.
Oh, yeah.
Next
There's
to
a
Fox.
Mohegan Sun, and then there's Foxwoods, yeah.
Well, we did it there, and Kenny just invited some of his favorite people, many of whom he had, hits with, like Dolly, and then Lionel wrote Lady, of course.
Right.
Alison Krauss covered But You Know I Love You, that the first edition had. She did a great version of that.
That was nice.
It was very nice, yeah. And so it was just a good show to honor Kenny. It was it was a great night. Really
Kenny
fun.
Rogers had a lot of hits, and he had a lot of love for Mickey Jones. I remember when Mickey was in the hospital in Thousand Oaks, and I think this was not that long ago. Kenny was not in good shape because he used a walker and wheelchair, but he went in the afternoon and to visit Mickey in the hospital in his wheelchair, which I thought was very touching that he would go do that, because that was not an easy trip for him. Well, listen, gentlemen, I'm going to move forward because I've got another guy waiting in the wings to get into the show here, and we've got a lot more content still. I thank you each so much for coming on and talking about our mutual friend, Mr. Mickey Jones.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Robbie. We miss him.
Amen.
We miss him for sure.
All right, my friends. Well, I'll talk to you guys later, and see you later, alligators.
Right.
So, now, waiting in the wings is, you saw him on so many of those clips. Let's bring him in. Jerry McWhorter, who is the host and the director of that show that we've been watching these clips from. So, give him a nice virtual round of applause, Mr. Jerry McWhorter, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, there he is. Okay, now all right, he's in the green room. Hey, Jerry, so come on into the show, and it goes like this, I think. Well, there's guest number one, so let me assign you to guest number one. And there you are, kid.
Ta-da!
So what do you think so far of this stuff that you've been seeing?
Oh, it's great. It's great to have people see these clips, and I gotta tell you, first and foremost, you really see what a great storyteller Mickey was.
Oh, unbelievable.
I mean, he was just a born entertainer, and so that show was a live show that we did on the stage in Simi Valley,
right?
And it we put to a packed house, as 200 and some people, this great little theater in Simi Valley, and we filmed it live. And then after the fact, I went back and cut it together and made the film out of it.
Well, one of the next clips that we have a few more clips to watch. So why don't we jump right back into that? And this is the stuff about Sinatra. So here it is.
Trini Lopez was signed to Reprise Records.
Exactly.
Which was owned by
Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. And then you guys played the Cal Neva Lodge.
Right.
Which was owned by
Frank Sinatra.
Frank Sinatra.
He loved Trini so much that when we'd be playing in the lounge at the Calneva, Sinatra'd come in and watch our show. I'm walking from the casino back over to the lounge where we're playing alternating sets with Buddy Rich. And Sinatra's at the crap table. He said, "Mickey," motioned me. I walked over and I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Sinatra." I always called him sir, and I always called him Mr. And he walked up to me and he said, "You know, I want to tell you something." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You always say sir and you always say Mr. And that's a trait that I admire more than anything else." I said, "Well, I'm a product of my parents." He said, "You give your parents a hug from me and tell them, good job." When my mom and dad came up, my mom and dad sat ringside to see Sinatra, and there would always be a bottle of champagne from Mr. Sinatra. And that's the kind of guy he was. Sinatra flew Trini and me in his helicopter from Burbank Airport to his house in Palm Springs, landed in his backyard about 30 feet from his back door, and he gave us a tour of the house, showed us the bedroom that he had built for John Fitzgerald Kennedy, had a red, white, and blue telephone. You pick up the receiver, and it rings the White House. So he was pretty connected. At the Calneva Lodge, Skinny D'Amato was the casino manager. And he would always say to us, "Hey, you come to the 500 Club, you come to Atlantic City, you come see me." And they sounded like that too. And so sure enough, we're in Atlantic City doing a big concert at the Steel Pier. And I said to Trini, I said, "Maybe we should call Skinny just to say hello and let him know we're here." So we called him. He said, "You come to the 500 Club tonight," which is where Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis met.
Right.
And it's just like in Goodfellow. We get to the door and Ed Pucci, Sinatra's bodyguard, meets us. They get a table, take it right down front, put it right in front. We have steak dinners, watch the show, everything's great. We get ready to leave. We said to Ed Pucci, "We'd like to see Skinny and say thank you for a wonderful dinner and a wonderful evening. It was great, we loved it." He said, "Follow me." So he takes us back through the bowels of the place, through the kitchen, and then into an enclosed, like a driveway, a garage. And he said, "Yeah, in the 40s, 50s, this is where we hit a bank, we just pull in here, the cops never find it." Hey. So we go into this little room where Skinny D'Amato's playing cards with two other guys. And he's got his green visor on and the little green shade right down over the table. And the other two guys he introduces as Uncle Marshall Cofano and Uncle Manny Scar. And Marshall Cofano sitting there, and he's got a shoulder holster over his chair with a .45, and over in the corner there's a Thompson and some shotguns and all this stuff. And on this whole wall is a portrait of Sinatra. So I think he was connected. I'm not sure, but I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah.
Great stuff, Jerry.
Yeah, it really was. So it's this documentary that we made from that live show, and I mean, just his storytelling and these they're almost like little routines, little songs that he'd go through, and telling that story. They have beginnings and middles, and then they have the ending to them, and it was just a really magical night. And fortunately, I got the film ready and finished, and we did a screening. Just a couple of years ago, I guess, back at that same theater for family and friends, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, you know what? It is a fascinating film, and I've just got we don't have the time to show the whole movie here, but what's the next step for this film? Because this should be in the theaters, actually.
Well, I don't know what the next step is. Part of it is that it doesn't. There's some music, not much. I recreated most of the music in there.
Good.
But there is some musical cues that that somebody owns the publishing to,
Sure.
and would need the rights needed to get, and some photographs and stuff like that. So I just haven't jumped through those hoops, and maybe somebody in your audience knows what to do with it. But I'd love to do another screening. It's just great. I just like people to see it and enjoy it, and so it's just a great thing. And it's a piece of musical history for
No
sure,
question.
told by a professional.
And it jumps out at me at all those points of, historical musical moments that Mickey Jones was a part of in such a diverse way and such a broad way. It's just crazy, And
Yeah,
we haven't
Phyllis
talked
says
about
he
his acting even,
Yeah, Phyllis says that he was the Forrest Gump of the music business.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Isn't it funny? I mean, it is. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time, all the time. Something historic happening.
One of the great lines at Phyllis, too, Phyllis, I remember, told me that she was asked, what would you do if Mickey hadn't made it? And she said her reply was, the possibility never crossed her mind. He's never failed at anything, and he was that kind of guy.
Yeah. Well, we've got a great kicker at the end of the film that kind of ties all that together. That's just a precious moment and kind of tells that story. I'll save it for you so when people get to see the film.
Well, we've got some few the next clip that I've got here is the Johnny Rivers stuff.
Okay,
so
great.
Can you want to set up Johnny
JR.
Rivers thing at all?
JR, as Mickey called him. Yeah, I mean, that was just another great stepping stone. It seemed like, and all of these stepping stones just kept moving him up and moving him forward to what happened to come around the bend. One of the things that you were talking about is Mickey being on the road for all the years that he was playing, and this is travel as much as anything. You've got to be able to play. You've got to be a good player. It's so important. But it's so important that you've got to be a good hang. You've got to be fun. You've got to be somebody that people want to be around and they want to have in their camp. Because you're going to be stuck in a bus, stuck on a plane, just stuck in a motel room. You're going to be with these people, 24 hours a day. And it's got to be somebody that is fun. And boy, there's plenty of musicians out there that can really cut the gig, but they're just a pain in the ass and they just get passed over. Mickey did not have that problem.
Boy, ain't that
people love being
the
around
truth.
him.
Well, here's how he got started with Johnny Rivers. This is fascinating. By the way, you do a great job interviewing him as well. Bravo, brother.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Here it is.
Every time we'd go back to PJ's, this young kid would come over and whisper in my ear because my drums were here and the crowd was right.
By the way, let's go back to this a second, just to set the stage. So, because I'm bouncing around chronologically here. So he was still playing with Trini Lopez here, and they were playing PJs, right?
Right. This is how Johnny Rivers came into the picture.
All right, and it goes like this.
Every time we'd go back to PJ's, this young kid would come over and whisper in my ear because my drums were here and the crowd was right here. He'd come whisper in my ear, and he kept saying, when are you going to go to work for me? And I kept saying, well, when you get enough money, give me a call. When I got back to LA, I called this kid up. He said, I just want you to know I got enough money. And his name was John Ramostella, which is Johnny Rivers. So I started work with Johnny Rivers.
And then before you know it, you're penitentiary bound. So let the midnight special shine a light on me.
Got to remember, there was Johnny Rivers, Joe Osborne on bass, and I was on drums. There were only 3 people there, and he never played with more than 3 people.
Yeah, he toured and worked as a trio.
Well, I'll tell you an interesting story. We worked the Whiskey A Go-Go forever, and we'd go out and travel, and we'd come back and work the whiskey. We're in England, and Lou Adler is our producer, and a guy comes up to Lou and said, look, I'm the producer of a TV series here in London called Danger Man, and we're going into America, but they changed the name to Secret Agent Man. And we'd like Johnny Rivers to sing the theme song. So after we've been working all night at the Whiskey, about 3 o'clock in the morning, we go at the Western, Studio 3 at Western down on Sunset, and we record Secret Agent Man. Now, we didn't know that Lou had invited about 100 people in the other studio and had 2 coolers full of beer and sandwiches and everything. And he would bring them in about 20 at a time just to do background noises like it's the whiskey. so he could control where he wanted them in the mix. So that's how the record you hear, Secret Agent Man, sounds like we're at the Whiskey, but it was really re-recorded in the studio with a few people, a few drunk people, but it worked.
Yeah.
Lou Adler knows how to do it.
Very cool. That's Secret Agent Man, too, and that's him. Of course, he's played on all those great records. Well, and you're a drummer, so you can relate to how good he sounded on those records.
Yeah. No, we had a lot in common. We were great friends, and you know what? Me and Mickey had this great idea that we need to go to this college course evening college course that was happening in Thousand Oaks, and that we needed to take this class. It was the history of the blues.
Oh,
so
I love
me
it.
and Mickey, so me and Mickey went down there once a week or whatever, and to take this college class on the history of the blues. And of course, we knew more than the teacher knew by a long shot. So it was fun, but just he was always up for something fun.
Well, that's part of his just the magic, the presence that he had, is that he was such. Well, you know what? I've got a bunch of cool pictures here. Let's jump. Let's show some of these pictures and to the audience. And if you see any, well, there we saw that with Kenny and Mickey. I don't know who that is on the left. Do you?
Yeah, that's one of his very close friends. I'm drawing a blank. Maybe Phyllis will text me and remind me
Okay.
of his name. It'll come to me shortly.
And then let's see. Oh, this is Kenny. Kenny in the first edition. A few years later, of course. This was. I'm not sure what event this. This might have been that 50th anniversary show that they were doing. Let's see. And,
Yeah, it looks like it.
This
there we
is
are.
fascinating.
Yeah,
And-
there. Go ahead.
Well, and we've got that clip. I'm going to show that clip. Actually, let's go show that clip now. Can you set that up a minute?
Well, I got to remind you of something here. When you see all of these 8mm silent movies, these are all Mickey's camera. He was carrying around a little 8mm camera and putting in everybody's face and filming things all the time, or he'd hand it to somebody, a friend in the crowd or roadie or something like that, and film it. Like you saw that footage of the Beatles. That was Mickey's camera. So all these decades later, he still had all this footage.
Wow.
And it's just a treasure trove of information. And there's a little clip of them playing live on the Kitty Hawk, or one of those big Navy ships.
Well, here it is. Yeah, Vietnam.
So let's cut to probably the most significant work that you did with Johnny Rivers, and that was your USO tour.
At the last minute, about a week before we were going to go, they said, would you guys mind taking this young actress, she's a singer and actress, taking her with you to Vietnam? And it was Anne Margaret. We said, if we must, we will. So we rehearsed about a week, about 5 songs for Anne Margaret, and we head out to Vietnam. We were in Vietnam for 4 months, which is a long time. The first month, we were out in the South China Sea aboard the Yorktown, the Ranger, the Kitty Hawk, from carrier to carrier to carrier.
So how often were you playing?
About every 3rd, 4th day. One of the things I'm really proud of, Johnny Rivers and myself got the Presidential Award from the Vietnam Veterans of America. And they presented me with my award. And I remember saying we had 900 Vietnam veterans in the room. And I said, I am honored just to be in your presence. And they loved it.
Yeah. And he was very patriotic, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. The live show that we did there was about 2.5 hours of us on stage. And there's lots of information and stories and footage that it couldn't all fit into the film.
Sure.
You know, yeah, and he was very patriotic. And then also talking about the lists of artists of different musicians that he played with. You know, you just can't list them all. You know, I mean, he played with Hendrix.
Wow.
How does that fit in? Yeah, Jimi Hendrix liked the first edition, was a fan,
Wow.
and would come to some of the big shows and stuff, and they'd let him sit in and play. They did this they did this TV show, Rolling on the River, which of
Right.
course Mickey has all of this, saves all. He's a saver, saved everything. And so, I mean, he played with B.B. King. He played with so many different people. He was really a blues man at heart. He'd
Right.
tell you first and foremost, he was a blues man.
Well, and it's from that start with Jimmy Reed, that's pretty cool. And
Yeah,
just he and Trini
absolutely.
in those early days too. But
Yeah.
I loved his playing. It was
Yeah, but yeah, it was just rock solid, and it was played to the music.
yes.
That's what it was about.
And that's
know?
the great drummers. That's what they play for the music, not for themselves.
It's all about the song.
Amen. Here's some more
Yeah.
pictures stuff. So that was them in Vietnam.
Aunt Margaret, yeah, in Vietnam. Another thing too is that Mickey stayed friends with these people. I mean, he
yeah.
stayed friends with Aunt Margaret for decades. You know.
Well,
It's
and
just
you
like
talked
said,
about we talked about Johnny Rivers. When we had his funeral and you were there, it was 2018, and Johnny Rivers came and sang at his funeral, and you know.
Yeah, I think I have that on my cell phone of him
Oh,
singing
I'd
there.
love to see that sometime. Yeah.
Yeah, singing with just acoustic guitar accompanying himself and singing at the gravesite. Yeah, it was special.
And then here is here's some more of those pictures. Let's see. Go over to this one right here. So that's of course the Beatles. That's that picture that he talked about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see what do we got. That's a classic, isn't it?
Yeah, there's more Bob Dylan pictures. Yeah, train station or wherever. Yeah, I don't know where they are. Somewhere in Europe, and there's Mickey and Bob sporting the 64 shades.
Yeah, totally cool. I've got to get you over here. Let's see. How do I do this? That's not doing it. Well,
One thing about the Judas, the Judas shout that, I mean, where, you know, you showed that clip of somebody saying, you know, play effing loud.
Yeah.
One of the point people thought that it was Mickey, and there's been documentaries and stuff, and people like saying that it was him. It wasn't. And one of the things that Mickey pointed out is that the guy had an English accent. That's why Mickey thinks it was one of the English roadies that was sticking up for him, which makes the most sense. You know, you'd have known if it was Bob, and
Sure.
and it wasn't. But it was probably one of the English roadies.
That is a historic.
There's the Forrest Gump of music, you know.
Yeah,
just
no doubt.
Right in the middle of something.
There's him with Johnny,
Yeah.
of course.
Yep, playing as a trio, and
The great Joe Osborne, on bass. You know, who was a great bass player. He ended up playing a lot of records.
I love it.
A&M, I think.
I know he did a billion studio sessions. He was definitely one of the wrecking crew, one of the first call guys in the LA area for a long time.
But that's on a ship.
Yeah, I
isn't it,
love that
looks like.
that's that you can see all the soldiers
Yeah.
hanging off the top there. And they just were playing as a trio. You know, you see they got the one amplifier set up there, Fender guitar amp, the bass amp, and then a little PA system, and they traveled light, and that's how they did it. And you know, those same drums, Mickey played those same drums for years.
Is
like
that
from
right?
one act. Yeah, it wasn't like he had roadies and all of his
Right.
gear was toted around for cartage. He carried those same drums from show to show.
And I think he said that one of his kits is in the is it in the Hard Rock in New York or something like that?
I think it's might be the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or one of those.
Right.
Yeah, he donated that set.
There's
set.
Ted
Ed Nugent.
Yeah, rocking out. Yeah. Oh, you know what? He did that movie, the Mighty. Well, what was it? the Fighting Temptations.
Yeah, the Fighting Temptations. Yeah.
And he always told me the story because my Hammond organ love.
I know what story he's going to tell you.
Well, why don't you tell it then?
Story.
Yeah,
no, it's only fitting that you tell it because he'd tell it to me too.
I know it's classic, and oh gosh, I can't think of her name now. She's one of the great gospel singers of all time. She's wider than she is tall, and her name is escaping me, but she's a great one of the great all-time gospel singers that was in that movie. Not Beyonce, she's great too, of course, and he was the organist, the Hammond organist, of course, and of course everything I do has Hammond organ. Go ahead.
I'm going to cut you right there.
Yeah. Okay.
When we were looking at that picture earlier, that was Alan Adelstein, one of the Phyllis texted me and reminded me, and a very close friend of Mickey's. And every time I would go over there, I went over there pretty much Thursday afternoons there when he was bedridden. And Alan would kind of change shifts, and Alan would be there. And
fantastic.
So that's who that was. So the gospel artist that you're talking about right now, while you show this clip or tell the story, Phyllis will probably text me and tell you who it is.
Oh, good. But so he was there, and he didn't really play the Hammond organ, but he was kind of finger syncing, as they say, acting like he was playing to the recording. And she came over to him and she says, "Wow, you are great." And he always loved the idea that he could fool her, one of the great gospel singers of all time, that he was playing the organ, and indeed he wasn't, but he was faking it.
Yeah, but he knows what the chord changes are,
yeah.
So he could accent and know, little body movements and move his hands because he'd studied the piece a little bit, knowing where the changes were, and they weren't looking at his hands, so he was faking this.
And he had the rhythm part of it. That's
Yeah, he thought that was great.
Yeah, I don't know if he ever told her that he was not really playing. I suspect he probably did.
No, he did, and she didn't believe him.
Let's go back to those pictures again here. Let's see. We've got they're over here. So that's and Beyonce is a singer, and who was the actor? Oh, Cuba Gooding Jr. was the actor.
Cuba Gooding Jr. Yeah.
Right. And then there's another classic Dylan picture.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a historic tour that's been documented so many ways. Oops.
You know what? Can I give you a little bit of backstory about
Please,
that?
I'd love it.
So he mentioned that, the band, they kept, when they were on that Dylan tour, they kept talking about the band, and the band stinks, and the band's too loud, and send the band home and all that stuff. And that really is where they later decided to take that name of the band when they went off on their own. So when Dylan had the motorcycle accident and Mickey was getting his salary and back in LA trying to become an actor, the other guys in the band, that's when they moved to were living in Woodstock, which is where Dylan did also. And that's when they started writing songs and they started getting their thing together. And then Levon came back to the group.
Right.
So they did a few shows with Levon, with Dylan, because what happened is Dylan ended up taking the whole group. Levon and the Hawks took the whole group, and so Mickey was out. And so they did a few shows with Dylan, and they were getting booed off stage and all that. And that's when Levon just couldn't take it and walked off of it. Now, I had become fairly friendly with Levon and over, through the end of his life too. And I really kind of glad that I was able to talk to Mickey and set Mickey a little bit straight, because for a lot of years, Mickey thought that Levon didn't like him, or Levon talked bad about him, or that there was some bad blood between him. And Mickey, and Levon never said anything negative about him. I had read Levon's book, and he never was disrespectful to Mickey. And but Mickey thought he was. Somebody had said something to him. And so I feel good that I'd kind of straightened that out, and I even read sections out of the book to Mickey and said, "Mickey, look, and this is what Levon wrote about you." He never said anything bad, and it's kind of set him at ease. For a long time, he thought that, that he was being disrespected. So
yeah, no, I get that, and that happens so many times in our business when there's not communication.
Yeah, and I don't think they had ever met in person.
Right. And he went and Levon went and worked on an oil rig during that tour in the Gulf of Mexico,
so
right?
They did a few shows in the States here, and with Levon and with Levon and the Hawks, his band, he was the lead singer. And then this was not that he says we're not used to getting booed and just getting written horribly about it. We're a solo band, and we had left Ronnie Hawkins. We were trying to do our thing, getting all the bad press. He just walked off the show. That's when the guy from New York, from Buffalo, Sandy Konikoff, came in literally last minute and filled in a couple shows. Then they were going to Europe and they had no drummer. That's when Bob said, hey, wait a minute. This is the time to call Mickey. So had Levon not walked off, that connection with Bob Dylan never would have happened.
Right.
I mean, that's just luck and happenstance how things happen.
Yeah,
so then
the
Mickey
fact that he was
slid in.
great and that Bob had heard him, and you know what, a great drummer that so much so that Johnny Rivers wanted to take him away from Trini, that Bob Dylan wanted to take him away from Johnny, and then ultimately the first edition wanted him. You know.
Well, that's why I say I got to go back to the thing that we were talking about earlier. A drummer that plays good time, has got a good feel, and plays simple, and plays in the pocket, and plays for the song. Singers and guitar players love that, because most musicians in general overplay. They play too fancy and too much stuff. But when you listen to the classic records that we all grew up on, those parts are real direct and real simple. And that's what Mickey was trained to do as a kid, and that's where his skills lied. That keeps you employed.
Well, let's move on in this some of these clips that I have, and we'll do some of the Elvis stuff.
Sure.
And which is fascinating, really interesting to me. The show that I do at 7 o'clock New York time, 4 o'clock California time, which I do on Mondays. I'm always doing two shows. That's called Reach Out with Ray and Steve. Our guest on that show was Jerry Schilling, who gets mentioned in this next clip. Jerry Schilling, of course, was part of the Memphis Mafia and friend of
So you already
Elvis's.
did that show today?
Yeah, I did that a couple hours ago.
So did you ask Jerry about Mickey?
No, I didn't get a chance to, because we were talking about so many things,
Right.
and it was so clear.
Yeah.
But I will at some point. But here it is. Here's Mickey and Elvis, and it goes like this.
I remember asking you. I said, "Have you ever met Elvis?" You go, "Oh yeah, knew him pretty well."
Yeah.
I said, "Well, yeah. Oh, that's right. You worked the International Hotel."
We opened the International in 1969, and we opened with Elvis, and we always worked with Elvis. We signed a 5-year deal. We worked 3 months out of the year. It was the place in town in '69. But let me just backtrack a little. I was working extra on a movie at MGM called Speedway '66. Richard Davis, who's one of the Memphis Mafia, comes up to me and he said, E wants to meet you. I said, E? He said, yeah, he wants to meet you. I said, why? Because he wants to ask you about Bob Dylan. So I do. I end up going into his big Vogue motor home, and for about an hour I'm sitting there chatting with Elvis, telling him about Bob Dylan. They said, we're going to lunch. He said, come on, go to lunch with us. So I get in his Lincoln Continental Mark IV. We drive to this little Mexican restaurant. We all walk in. It's Elvis and the Memphis Mafia, really, nobody else. Joe Esposito and Jerry Schilling and all his guys. And they go into this little back room, have our own lunch in a private room. And so I actually got to know Elvis a little bit there, but when we opened the International, we did get to know him. That's where I met my wife. She was a 22-year-old cocktail waitress, and the first night I saw her, it was like I got hit by a train. I would go in an hour before our show, and I'd sit at this bar at the back of the showroom, and I'd have a Coke. And she'd walk by. She knew who I was because I was on the show. She'd walk by, how you doing tonight? Good, how are you? Okay. And that was our conversation for at least a week, maybe 10 days. And she did walk by one night. She may dispute this, but it's true. She walked by and she said, so how's it going tonight? And I said, I'm fine, how are you? She said, I'm fine, can I ask you a question? I said, absolutely, shoot. She said, so what's the deal? Are you gonna ask me out or what? She would go to the employee cafeteria, her and her girlfriend, and 2 walls of the cafeteria were glass. and they'd sit over here by this door, and they'd see Elvis coming down for the show. So they'd come out this door and meet Elvis right there so they could get a kiss from Elvis. So my wife kissed Elvis. So I would like you to ask her who's better.
Mickey, what a great story. Yeah, that's classic.
Yeah, I tell you, there's a little buttons to end of his stories.
Oh,
he knows exactly. He knew exactly how the timing. He didn't. They weren't too long. They would build momentum. Oh, you heard him. You heard him. Tell the same stories, and they're like performing little routines, and they had little buttons on the end of them, and it was brilliant.
He had such a dramatic flair, and as you talk, even and a vision for TV and movies and that whole genre, because from the time he was carrying around his 8mm cameras.
Yeah.
So hey, you're a drummer, man. Tell us about your band.
Well, I have a band called Hot Roux, R-O-U-X, kind of a Louisiana flavored band, and that's how I originally met Mickey. Of course, I was a fan before that, and I knew who he was, and I knew about his acting career and all. And then I met him through, I think, one of the Simi Valley Blues festivals, several years ago.
He was like a part of that for decades, right?
Oh yeah. Well, he was the MC of the show.
Yeah.
And so we got off and just hit it off like gangbusters. And he used to come to my shows, and he would come sit in sometimes. And one time we're doing a gig up here in Ventura, and he comes in, is sitting in, and he's sitting at got his guitar and, like you're saying, playing Double Bogey Blues or whatever. Yeah. And he starts going on one of his stories, and it's going a little bit too long. And this voice screams out from the crowd, which was Phyllis, and said, to make a long story longer.
Oh, that's classic.
Yeah, heckled him from the crowd.
I mean, they're a great pair too, aren't they?
Oh yeah. They were they were a great pair. They were both of them spicy.
Yeah, no question. And
so,
she could hang.
So yeah,
I mean, she wouldn't back down from him either. She's tough in that.
Oh no, she'd win all those battles.
Yeah.
So like the film that we've been listening to, is all music that I've recreated with my band to not have to try to use licensed music and have a chance to do something with it. So I'm up here in Ventura, and things are just now opening up and getting some of the regular gigs back, and looking forward to good things.
Amen to that. I've got one more clip. I want to kind of get moving on because it's actually we're past. I try to keep this at 2 hours, and we're kind of a little over that now, but not bad. We've got one more clip from your. Actually, and before I do, I've got a bunch of pictures. Because we haven't really gotten into the acting much, more about music. But check this. That's from Justified, isn't it?
Justified, yeah. That's from which was the last big show that he was on. He was on for numerous episodes, and it was really a good part. He was a recurring character on. So you were that famous, I'd have been a lot nicer to you.
That's funny. Yeah. Let's see. We got and there's another tough guy role.
Yeah,
do you know what that's from?
Role. I don't remember what that was from. Well, you got it there. That's the clips from the show. That was just brilliant.
Isn't that? Is a brilliant thing.
It's really a brilliant piece. And you at the end of the film. We have, it's written on there that Mickey has been in over 80 movies and more than 500 TV shows. So when you start showing pictures of things, you got 500 shows to pick from.
Oh, there's more Tim Allen and him.
Yeah.
Let's see here. There he is, tough guy again.
Yeah,
he can play a tough guy, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yes. Or a cowboy.
Although, you know what, you see those tough guys, and maybe because I know him, but I I think you can kind of see in his eye that he's really a big teddy bear at heart. And maybe it's just because we know him. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
Well, he's an
the
actor.
audience could see that, a little bit, and that's why they would like it, Oh,
Well,
look,
the bottom line to every character is they have to be likable.
yeah.
Even if they're bad guys, there's got to be a magnetism, a charm about them that they're essentially the word is likable.
Well, here is I do have some of those clips from the end of your one-man show or two-man show, I should really call it. And here it is.
And thanks to her, I have an acting career because she worked 2 and 3 jobs the first couple of years of our life together here. And it's because of her that I was able to become an actor. Don't stop loving me just because I'm gone. Don't stop wanting me, it won't take on too long. Hold on to my memory, always keep it near. But please don't stop loving 'cause I'm not here. I worked all my life in the barrooms every night. Paid my dues and I sang my songs and I got into some fights. Don't know why you chose me, but I just want you to know. I hope you're gonna miss me when I go. Don't stop loving me just because I'm gone. Don't stop wanting me, I won't be gone too long. Job can take you places when you just don't want to go. No, I hate to leave you, babe, but the show must go on. No matter where I'm working, you're always on my mind. I'll be on the first plane leaving this town behind. Don't stop loving me just because I'm gone. Don't stop wanting me, I won't be gone too long. Hold on to my memory, always keep it near.
No question, he will be missed. He is missed.
One more piece I got to tell you, Robbie.
Yeah.
Mickey had a recording career. That last record was a solo record that he did, and that was actually a song that he wrote that's on an LP, which I've got a few copies of. So that was
cool.
Mickey singing, and that was a song that he wrote.
And I know he was on. He actually recorded for Stax Records.
Well, he's the Forrest Gump of music. He'd been everywhere. He'd been to Muscle Shoals. He'd been to Stax. He'd been everywhere.
Here's something
I've
that I
been
should have.
everywhere, man.
Amen to that. And that Mickey Jones, that would be me, rock and roll survivor to Hollywood here, actor. And I think I have and people can get this on Amazon, I guess, would probably be the best way to buy it. I don't know if he's got a website still that Phyllis might sell this stuff through, but I would encourage people because what a fascinating life. Let me see if I've got those pictures here. I think I might have some. Let's see here. Oh, there's some more Mickey. Of course, that's him in Simi Valley, isn't it? That's that looks familiar.
Could be. That I don't know.
And there's Mickey and Phyllis and their granddaughter.
Yeah.
Mickey and Phyllis. They were a perfect match.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's a classic picture, too. Mickey and Phyllis.
Yep.
He was a deep guy and a multi-talented guy in a lot of different areas, of course,
Yeah.
Oh, there's that classic picture of him.
That's from the blues festivals, I think.
So there's a cover of the book. Mickey Jones.
In the background, that background there is the wall in his house. It's got all the gold records on it.
Yeah, right here. Yeah, look at all those records.
Yeah.
I mean, and those are classic records too. Just an amazing life, an amazing story, and you did a fantastic job of capturing all those stories too. And I hope and pray that that can get out so the world can see a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we should do with it. Maybe your people will write in and we'll do a screening or something. It's great fun to walk down those memories again and hear him tell those stories, and it's just great vibe.
Well, thank you for coming on and spending a lot more time than I mentioned that we would tonight. But
My pleasure.
you know what? And I hope and pray that it touched some hearts and lives here, that we had a chance to share some of Mickey's celebrity, some of Mickey's talent, some of Mickey's life and career, with everybody out there. And I know all who knew him and loved him hopefully will get a chance to enjoy this. And by the way, people can come and watch this later. So it's always on YouTube and Facebook all the time. So just go click on the links. By the way, next week, I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to do some closing up the shop here. Thanks again.
Thank you, Robbie. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, we'll be in touch, brother. You take care, Jerry. And that's Jerry McWhorter. Somebody asked. Jerry McWhorter. And how do they get a hold of you, Jerry McWhorter? Do you have a website or something?
Of course, they can look at me on Facebook, or my band name, which is Hot Roo, HOTROUX @gmail is my email address.
Fantastic.
So hotroo.com or hotroo@gmail.
Fantastic. All right, brother. Well, you have a good one, and thanks again.
Good. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to close up the shop here. I've got one more song I'm going to play to take it out on. And thanks for everybody for watching. This show could have gone on for hours and hours. There's so much stuff. Again, here's that book of Mickey's. Mickey Jones, That Would Be Me, rock and roll survivor to Hollywood actor. And what a life, what a career. Phyllis, pray for God's speed to you, God's comfort to you, and hope that this gave you some joy tonight. We're going to take it out with a song from our Trinity Lutheran Church, which we live stream every Sunday morning, 9 a.m., Facebook. And by the way, next week's going to be a great show. We have, talk about rock and roll, Mark Farner is going to be my guest next Monday, 7 o'clock. Mark Farner was the lead singer, Mark Farner was the songwriter, and Mark Farner was the guitar player for Grand Funk Railroad, one of the biggest rock bands in the world. In the early 70s, they sold out Shea Stadium faster than the Beatles. They sold out Madison Square Garden night after night. And he's going to be with us. And he's a fascinating guy, a super talented guy, and he can rock. I'll tell you what, Mark Farner from Grand Funk Railroad tomorrow night. So God's big blessings to each and every one of you. Thanks for joining us on Jammin' Java. Go on and if you like our page, then you get notified for when the shows start and all that kind of stuff. And tell your friends. Let's get the Jammin' Java family to get even bigger. And so this is the Trinity Lutheran Praise Band taking it out with a song called Remember Who. Remember Who? And by the way, I know where Mickey Jones is right now. He is with his Lord and Savior. There's no doubt about it. He loved Jesus big time. And as big a heart as he had, his heart was biggest for his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And he told me that over and over. He and I prayed so many times together. And I know he's up there celebrating, and he's probably telling some stories, too, up there. I know he's playing some drums. And so there you have it. Thanks to everybody who contributed tonight. Mickey Jones, you are missed. I love that guy. Remember who, everybody? Jesus Christ. Remember who? Jesus.
Remember who? Remember who? Remember who? God's one and only Son. Just have your heart